Welcome back to the Fuse Show, everybody. I'm excited to have my guest, David Henzel, with us today. David is the CEO of Upcoach and a veteran entrepreneur who has been building in the SaaS and e-com space for over 20 years. He's had multiple exits, including MaxCDN. His passion is to help individuals and their organizations reach their full potential. Thanks for joining us, David.
Thank you for having me, Jim.
You know, I do research ahead of time, and you are absolutely prolific, like just prolific. You've been involved in so many different things. I'm curious to hear a bit of an overview of what you're working on now. Obviously, you have a history in exiting MaxCDN. What is your focus at this point?
So I have multiple focuses. I have a portfolio of businesses, a few productized service businesses, like modern BPOs, TaskDrive lead research, shortlist, backlink building, LTVplus, like CX people, and a few other investments. But the majority of my time goes into Upcoach, which is a coaching tool that helps coaches run their coaching business better. Initially, I built this tool because I have a course which is called Managing Happiness, where I help people to figure out their personal mission, vision, core values, the goals that they have, and the habits that they need to achieve these goals. I'm a big believer that habits determine everything in your life. If you're rich or poor, happy or unhappy, obese or in shape, it all boils down to which habits do you cultivate. Hence, I'm a big fan of this. And I have been running Managing Happiness for a while, and I could not find a tool that helped me to facilitate this. So I kind of cobbled it together with Google Docs and WhatsApp and some core software and a bunch of stuff. It was pretty hard to manage. And so I got the CTO of one of my other businesses, 50 SaaS, to build me something, and it got better and better and better and better and better. At some point, I reached out to a friend of mine who's a very well-known coach in the States, Todd Herman, who wrote the book, The Alter Ego Effect. I'm sure if you heard of him, but he's an awesome dude. And I said, hey, Todd, as you know, I'm not a coach, but I built this coaching software. What do you think? And I showed it to him. He said, that's amazing. I want to invest. Let's make this big together. And so I ended up with another business, which is Upcoach right now. So I have a bunch of balls in the air, but the majority of my time goes into running product at Upcoach. And I'm the CEO at Upcoach right now. All my other businesses, I have business partners or GMs that are running them. So I'm not in the day-to-day.
Okay. So as I was looking through your different businesses, it seems like you're scratching your own itch, right? Is that fair to say, where you're confronting a problem, or you see a problem in one of your businesses and you're building a solution and then selling that solution externally? Is that roughly accurate?
Yes. So after I sold MaxCDN, we moved to Turkey, and I'm originally from Germany, and sure. After we sold the business, my wife wanted to go back to family. To be fully transparent, my mother passed away 8 years ago. So, and my wife was very close with her, and she, kind of hit her really hard. And so she wanted our daughter to grow up closer to family.
I see.
And so she wanted to move back to Germany, but I couldn't go back to German weather. So, I said, after living in LA for 8 years, so we ended up moving to the south of Turkey, which is still just a 3-hour flight to Germany, but warm. And so we're here now, and after we moved here, I thought, okay, I'll just do Managing Happiness a little bit on the side and chill out with my wife and my daughter, but I got terribly bored. And then I read this book called Conscious Capitalism by John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods, which talks about, the old way of doing business is a business has to increase shareholders' value. It has to make the owners of the business rich, right? That's the idea of a business. But the conscious way of doing business is you take care of all stakeholders, meaning your employees, your customers, your suppliers, the community, the planet, etc., everything.
Yeah.
And if you have a business like this, then a business is the best vehicle to have a positive impact in the world. And take one step back further, the reason why I sold MaxCDN, or I asked my business partners, hey guys, I think it makes sense to sell, was my wife went through breast cancer. Knock on wood, she's doing great today. But back then, this was a big wake-up moment for me, and I envisioned me laying on my deathbed, looking back at my life, thinking, did I really do what I was supposed to do? Did I have the impact I wanted to have? And it made me realize that, MaxCDN is cool and all, but it's not really, I'm not really super passionate about this, and it doesn't have this great impact. I want to do something with more impact, hence also why I did Managing Happiness. But after reading this book, I realized that a business, when you run it in a conscious manner, is the best way to have a positive impact in the world. And so I started LTVplus because I want to have a people business with, where people are the product, where I have like lots of employees. So I can provide a good work environment, good culture, good pay, and a good job for people. And, hence, putting food on the table because there's something that makes me happy. So this was like the initial thing why I did LTVplus. And then TaskDrive we started, which is a lead research business when you do cold outbound. When we had MaxCDN, we hired Aaron Ross pretty early on.
Predictable revenue.
Yeah, predictable revenue. Before he was that big of a deal when he just released his book. Oops. And he taught us his methodology, and then we did a lot of outbound, and we had like our LA sales guys sit there and do lead research, and I was like, okay, this doesn't make any sense. People who make like 200K plus should not scroll through LinkedIn figuring out who do I have to contact, right? Yeah. So, and my business partner, Samir, back then, he was running our sales team. He was like really obsessed with this. And so he actually left MaxCDN early to build TaskDrive. And after we had the MaxCDN exit, and he also sold his hosting business that he had with his brother, and he just wanted to play in the stock market. And so he just wanted to get rid of TaskDrive. And it was very similar to, it was also people business, so similar processes. So it made sense for me to purchase this from him. And then Shortlist, it's just happened. I invested into it, and it's growing nicely. It also kind of fits in the cross promote between the businesses.
Sure.
So yeah, it's kind of serendipitous. I don't know, just happened, with all these businesses.
Let me ask you this as a quick segue. What are your thoughts on going deep in one business versus sort of going wide in multiple businesses? Or maybe it's both. Maybe you did that with MaxCDN and then you're kind of going wide. But I know there's pros and cons and everybody has kind of a different opinion on that. What would you say to founders? There's sort of that crossroads. Hey, do I go deeper in my current business or should I start some new businesses?
It's by the way, sorry if you hear the barking. We have 8 dogs. My wife really likes dogs, and they're running around chasing something. If you manage to focus really hard and you have like something that really sticks, then it can become a really massive business. For example, my old business partner, Oshin, who I had a business with while running MaxCDN, he, when my daughter was born, was like, hey dude, I can't do 2 businesses, and, having kids just like, that doesn't fly. Yeah. So I left the business and, gave my shares back, and they started to build a bunch of apps in Shopify. And then, they released every month, they released a new app and marketed it. And, until they had like a bunch of apps that were doing okay, and one was like really standing out, and then they kind of like focused hard on this one and sold the other ones. So I think that's if you can pull this off, this is a really good approach to kind of like, test stuff and find something where you really have traction, you really have market fit, and then you go balls to the wall. Because I think it's a trap when you think like, oh, I have to focus on one thing, and you kind of pick a market that's, I don't know, not that hot or whatever, I think you kind of make everything work, but you should only really go balls to the wall if you're really passionate about this, if you're really solving a big need, if there's like lots of opportunity, then I think it makes sense to focus on one thing. But there's also, it really depends what you want. For me, it's like kind of almost a lifestyle business. I enjoy this, even the business are growing very fast. And I think a bunch of them will become very massive. We're already at a very decent size with a bunch of them. But I think in terms of potential, Upcoach has the potential to become also a $1 billion business. By the way, Oshin, he did recharge payments, was like one of the apps. And they just raised money at a 40x valuation, 40x revenue, at 280 million at like a 2-point-some billion dollar valuation. So it's like, so this is like and this was like the strategy of like finding something that really works and then kind of like selling the other apps and focusing hard on the thing that works.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I wanted to go back to what you mentioned earlier about kind of the sense of urgency and a theme that I've been thinking a lot about lately. And I read a really great article by Paul Graham, an essay on his website, and talks about the shortness of life. And he said that we generally don't think much about that, or it's more difficult to quantify. He said something along the lines of like, if you have a little child, they're only going to experience maybe 8 Christmases that are kind of in the magical realm, right? Like, making the passage of time more palpable. And it just occurred to me, it's like, we don't know how much time we have left. And when it comes to creating a business that is impactful in a positive way, and I very much align with your ethos and what you're saying, and my business partner and I are completely aligned in that way as well. And we love providing jobs. Like, I think I get more joy out of providing jobs than just about anything else. And I recognize that, the accumulation of wealth is really just a byproduct of adding more value to the world. And to your point, I think business makes sense as a vehicle to do that. But I'm curious how you reconcile the passage of time. Now, I didn't plan on this question, so I need to make sure I ask it in a way that makes sense. But I'm curious how you reconcile the passage of time and then how you choose to do what's best. I mean, if maybe a better way to look at this is, if you knew exactly how many days you had left on this earth, what would you prioritize? How would that look? And then how do you make those decisions?
With managing happiness, as I mentioned before, it's a group coaching to figure out your personal mission, vision, and core values. And I think this is how I view things through everything that I'm doing, like through the filter on what my mission, vision, values are, right? And also kind of what roles do I have in my life? I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a business partner. I have to take care of myself, in terms of health and personal growth, etc. So to kind of make sure that I'm covering all these aspects. But I think if you're lucky enough to figure out what you really want, what really makes you happy, where you can provide value to the world, because I think or value to people, I think this is kind of deeply ingrained in humans in general, that if you help others, this is what makes you happy.
Yeah.
Way more than any money. And, again, if you provide value, money is a side effect of providing value, as you just mentioned. Then, I think it's always a life well lived, focusing on the stuff that you think helps people.
What are your thoughts on, there's this kind of expectation, especially among young founders, that they work, 16 plus hours a day, burning the candle at both ends. And I recognize there may be a time and a place for that. Maybe they're in a position where they're just out of college, they don't have dependents at home, et cetera. And maybe it makes sense for them. But one of the things that I've been thinking about lately is, like, I can have a super impactful sales call, or even just a meeting, just an enjoyable conversation with a fellow founder. And that one conversation is so valuable in so many ways that it really doesn't matter if I do anything else that day. In other words, like, measuring the productivity of my day and whether or not I feel accomplished based on not time spent, but rather...
Oh, it's all about results. It's all about results.
Yeah.
This is also how, I'm a business partner with other people, and, they spend way more time in the business in the day-to-day, but I bring a lot of value because I make strategic partnerships, or, I bring in the key hires, etc. Kind of like making these connections just like adds a lot of value to the business. So it's like, it's really, the outcome is what matters. And I think, especially in the MaxCDN days, I work like insane hours, like 16-hour days, like 7 days a week. Like my wife was still in Germany, and I was just for 6 months, I was just basically only working, like waking up in the morning and just going. I think, like, one thing that people always or often, or I misjudged back then is, when I went to the gym, I always felt bad because I could have been working. But you kind of need this, or like going for a run. Like, I have the best ideas when I go for a run, or like, while I'm sitting in the gym, or even going to the sauna afterwards, I sit there and I process stuff. You need some free flow to kind of process, because, and also, I guess once the business has some traction, let's say in the beginning, you're just 2 or 3 people rolling up a boulder up the hill. But once you have like 20, 30 people pushing this boulder, it makes way more sense for you to step back and think about, like, hey, is this the right hill? Are we, like, is there something in front of it so we can remove it? Or, kind of like, it's about making the right decisions, because this is kind of what will have way bigger impact than you just like pushing or chopping on something, So I think this.
So what would your advice be to founders? And this is very much for me as well. I mean, we're at a team size of 40 in our business, or in our support business. And I'm sensing that it's getting close to time for me to be less in the weeds, less in the day-to-day, to let go of more so I can spend more time just thinking. I think that I don't spend enough time doing that. So what would be your advice to founders that are at that transition point where like I feel like I am the bottleneck and I'm the limiting factor and I need to get past that? And I fully trust my team, but there's something to be said about that transition. And it's kind of scary, because it's not what I'm used to.
You gotta trust people, and you gotta also, people perform much better when they know the weight is actually on their shoulders. Like daddy or mommy are not coming in to save it. Like it's on them. And so people kind of like, and they feel like, okay, they really trust me, and then they can actually really grow by doing this. I have a fun story with this. When we sold MaxCDN, we sold to StackPath, the former founder and CEO of of SoftLayer, like a big hosting company.
Okay.
He was the CEO, and he sold SoftLayer for like multiple billions to IBM. And I was the CMO of StackPath. We bought like a few businesses and kind of putting it together into a new one. And I was putting together the brand, and I always got Lance into the CEO into meetings, kind of showing like where we are, kind of like, showing the process. And he sat through the meeting, said like, it's good, and then left, and after the third time of like not really getting any feedback, I pulled him aside, like, dude, like, am I fucking up? Or, like, what's going on? Or don't you care? Like, enlighten me, like, what's going on? And he's like, no, as a CEO, I only have to do three things. I have to make sure we have enough money, meaning enough money coming in, or I raise enough money. I preach the mission and the vision of the company like a parrot to the outside and to the inside world. Mm-hmm. And the third thing I have to do is I have to get key people in the key positions that are better than me in this area, and leave them alone, let them do the thing, just manage them by KPIs and make sure that they're, things are on track. And this was like a big aha moment for me, because like I was like, we were like stirring the pot everywhere and kind of like driving people mad, and so kind of like trusting people and letting them do it, and then kind of like coach them on stuff. Like, my management mentor said, as a leader, you have to wear 4 different hats. You have to first play the leader and set expectations, kind of tell people what you want. Then you have to be the inspector. You have to inspect what you expect, because people only respect what you inspect, right? Then you have to be the coach and counselor, basically from what you have inspected, kind of give them feedback, like, hey, you could do this better, do that better, whatever. And you basically run through these 3 things over and over, and then from time to time you bring in the 4th one, which is the judge, and where the judge's head, and you deliver rewards or consequences, and this was like, big aha moment for me to just like, I always like messed up with the inspect what you expect because people only respect what you inspect. This is like That's the thing good. Where I always drop the ball. What's like super powerful, to be aware of that.
Man, what are your thoughts on, I know that a lot of founders come to this intersection where they have to make a decision if they're going to upskill themselves to run a much larger organization. As you well know, like in the sort of outsourcing support industry, there are players out there that have multiple thousands of employees. I know that TaskUs, for example, who's a predominant player.
I know Bryson Jasper.
Oh, do you? I love those guys. They do like
30,000 employees right now.
Yeah, it's insane. I'm such a believer in their ethos, and I could get on a soapbox here, but like I think that they are a leader in the movement to go away from the legacy BPO that treats people like crap, mm-hmm. to one that is aligned with the startups they work with that treat people really well, mm-hmm. and prioritize staff and taking care of their people. So I respect them so much for that. And it's interesting because we're just a blip on the radar compared to them, but they are paving the way, and they're literally helping expand the industry as a whole. Because I think that the legacy BPOs are going to lose traction because they can't just turn on a dime. A lot of them have this awful culture, and they can't just change that quickly. And I think more and more startups are not okay with that, and are going to work with companies like ours, as in yours and mine and TaskUs, that are willing to treat people like they deserve to be treated.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And this is how it should be. And, Bryce and Jasper definitely have been crushing it on all fronts. something we've been doing, or what we've been focusing on who we've been hiring even before COVID, we've always been remote first. And, especially in the Philippines, people have such a long commute to the office. It's like sometimes 4 hours per day.
I've heard.
It's not like in your comfy car listening to a podcast. It's like in also not the nicest form of transportation. So it's really tough. And kind of like if you do the math, they say 4 hours per week. It's 20. How much is like 20 hours per week in travel time. Right. And if you kind of do the math, like how much more vacation you technically have, because you save you save like almost 3 days per week, 3 work days per week is basically on vacation. It's kind of like just treating people better. Yeah, absolutely.
I'll go back to what I was talking about here in a second, but real quick, I'm curious if you've had any pushback from clients in having an all remote team. If any of your clients really prefer or push you to have them in office versus remote.
Yeah. And I think we may have lost 1 or 2 because of that. We had like larger customers who want to build an office out for them. But yeah, we've been sticking to our guns. Like we want to be remote first.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so let's go back to this topic. So let's take Bryce and Jasper, co-founders of TaskUs as an example. So they had a point in their growth that they had to make a decision on either bringing in an outside CEO to help them scale or upskilling themselves to be able to do that. And I remember listening to a podcast where Jasper was talking about, I think he's the president. He was talking about the highest and best use of his time is building relationships, meeting people, speaking with their clients and prospective clients, et cetera. And I think Bryce is the CEO, if I remember correctly. But a business that has 20, 30, 50, even 100 employees is quite different than one that has 30,000. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on upskilling as the founder or co-founder versus hiring someone that has more experience at that scale.
Yeah, I guess. I think as the business grows, you always kind of like hire good people below you, kind of still, and kind of, I guess a good manager always manages themselves out of a job, so kind of like just like hiring more and more people below you, and, you'll just like, again, make strategic plans or, making the right decisions type of thing. Right. But, that's the thing with a fast growing startup. You really have to grow with the startup, which is like the biggest personal growth, personal development crash course that you can possibly get. Right. And with MaxCDN, I really felt that, I had to like often like really catch up with the business, and otherwise, if you can't do that, you realize at some point if you're conscious enough, and then you just gotta step back or like find somebody who kind of like, replaces you. But it's definitely a stressful thingy, fast growing business.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting thing to consider, when you get to that point. I'm curious. So this is kind of a random question. Can you tell me if there's any sort of mainstream practices, beliefs, ideas that you strongly disagree with?
In life or in
Sure, hit me with it. Life, business. I want to know how you think.
I only consume plants. I'm fully plant-based for a very long time, and I think people will wake up and more and more become more conscious and not consume animals anymore. Because just from a cruelty, not health or whatever, but just like from a cruelty perspective. Because there's like no difference between a dog or a cow or whatever, like they all have emotions, they all feel pain, etc. And I think there's going to be, I don't know, like in 20 years, let's say over 50% of the Western world will be plant-based.
That would be great. What drives that passion for you?
So initially I stopped eating meat when I was 18 because I just didn't like it, or like I did not have meat for like 4 months or so without consciously recognizing. Thought, okay, I can skip it. It doesn't matter to me. And I was still consuming cheese. But then I watched this documentary called Beyond Carnism. It's a TED Talk. And this kind of really opened my eyes to like, how cruel it actually is and like how messed up. And I can't live without it, so why would I do this? And, as I mentioned before, I have this condition called aphantasia. So I cannot relive emotions. I cannot create images in my head. And so I also don't have these cravings like, oh my God, the steak tastes so amazing or whatever. It's just like this doesn't exist in my world. And so I guess
that is a gift, man.
Fairly easy for me to stop things.
Yeah.
It's also why I don't drink, I don't smoke, no drugs, no caffeine. Completely straight edge, and it's very easy to.
I imagine you feel really good most of the time too, huh?
Yeah, I'm always very happy. I'm always like very even keel. I'm never like yay, and also never sad. It's always like the same.
Yeah. Yeah, I've struggled with my weight for a long time. And there was a period of my life that I went vegan, and I have never felt better. But the struggle for me is emotional, right? Like it's the attachment to food from my childhood and just a lot of emotional connection there. So I'm a big believer in it, certainly from a cruelty perspective, but also just a health perspective. I think it's just a better way to eat.
I just watched a TED Talk this morning, and he said, environment always trumps will. So if you set yourself up, if we don't have any sweets in the house or chips or whatever, I just don't eat it. So I just don't buy it. So it's very easy for me to eat super clean if I just don't surround myself with it.
That's an interesting point. I think along those same lines, our company is fully remote, but I have a small office that's about 5 minutes from my house, and I've got a lot of kids at home, and I purposely have this set up but I've noticed that when I walk in my office, it's time to work. Like I just have this trigger or association that when I come in here, this is my work area. Period.
It's like going to the gym, like you're there to work out. It's like the only thing.
Yeah. And there was a period where I worked from home, and like I just don't work as well from home. And when I didn't have a dedicated space, I think you can create this literally in your house. But when I was trying to work from my kitchen table or my easy chair or whatever, it's like, it just didn't work because my mind just wasn't in the right place.
Yeah. Environment, really important. So same for me. We built we had an office here in Bodrum, which we used to have leadership retreats and stuff like this. But once the pandemic hit, I closed it down because I realized how much time I spent driving to the office and driving back and going to the gym, etc. So we added an attachment to the house here, and below it we added a gym. So I have my trainer come to the house, and I'm not leaving anymore. So people have to come to me.
Yeah, that's great. So tell me, regarding managing happiness, I'm really curious. Like you have an inside look into the success of, I'm sure, a lot of founders and leaders. What have you been able to tease out as kind of the ingredients? When I say success, I don't mean just financial. I mean like success in the way it's defined for that person, where they are feeling a sense of alignment with their mission and their values. What is the key to that?
I think a key to this is to kind of really deeply understand what you really want and not what your parents want and not what society wants. We create like vision boards as one of the exercises in the course. And one of the guys, he initially added like this fancy car to the vision board. And like a few weeks in, he removed it and said like, I don't even know why I put this there. I don't even like cars, it's just like, it's just like we often keep up with the Joneses and do like stupid shit that we don't really, that's not us. Or we take the job that your parents want, or, also just communications, like kind of like really deeply talk with your wife. Like, what does she really want? What do you really want? To kind of get aligned. This takes away a lot of the headache, not answering kind of a tangent, but
no, it's fine. It's good.
I created Managing Happiness. Originally, it was like a course on how to apply business principles to family life, because I came home after a long meeting about the roles and responsibilities at MaxCDN. I was sitting on the couch, and my daughter was like still in diapers, and I was tired on the couch. She's like, "Hey, honey, look, Emma has a full diaper." And my wife like flipped out because she thought I told her to change the diaper, which was not my intention. I was just tired sitting there. And I was, while she was like mad at me, I was like, why do we fight about this? She changed the diaper 90% of the time and I'm happy to do it, but I just was not aware that, at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday, it's my turn. And then I realized we never talked about the roles and responsibilities in our household. And the next morning we sat down, just like wrote this down. Like, what do you expect of me? What do I expect of you? And this took away 80% of the friction we ever had in our relationship, and it's just like made everything so much easier. And even if this comes up again, like, oh, I do so much, you do nothing. It's like, you can take out the sheets, like, no, honey, actually I do this and this and this, and you do this and this, and we can kind of move shit around. But you have like this basis of communication. So this, I can highly recommend this. So you just mentioned you have kids, just like sit down with your wife and figure out like, who brings them to school, who puts them to bed, who does this, that. And, made a world of a difference for me.
That's so great. My wife and I have done something very similar. We've been married 16 years and she's a stay-at-home mom and has been for almost that whole time, which is a huge sacrifice on her part and a largely thankless job. But we very much did the same thing where we delineated roles and expectations, and it's not perfect, but it really has been quite useful for us, actually.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit more about integrating work and home life. You were talking on another interview that I listened to about that topic, and I would love for you to share a little bit about your feelings on that and how to. You were saying that you don't like the term balance, work-life balance. So how do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, if it's balance, it's always like a tug of war. I think like work-life integration is cooler. For example, we go to the beach here, and my wife and my daughter and a few friends, they're hanging out at the beach. I'm like a few meters behind in like a cafe that's at the beach. I just like work, have a few calls, take half an hour break, play with my daughter in the water, come back, do more calls, like these type of things. And I think it has to do with like quality time that you spend with each other. For example, I bring during the week, my wife brings my daughter to bed and on our daughter, and on the weekend I bring her to bed, and it's like I have. Oh, another thing that's amazing actually. It's called. Have you read the book or heard about family board meetings?
No.
It's the idea that with your kids, every quarter, you spend a minimum of 4 hours uninterrupted, just one-on-one time together with the kid. And the kid builds a list of stuff the kid wants to do, and it's a blast. It's so cool. And you have it on the calendar because, you think like, oh, you spend time together, but it's a very different thing when you're alone together. Mommy's not there. It's just you and you have a few. So you'd have like multiple board meetings per kid, like it's always one-on-one time. And it's the best. So I can highly recommend that you use. And kind of like building this list, taking some, afterwards I always record like a video with her. It's like, well, how was your experience? And the stuff that she says, she's only 7. It's really mind-boggling. First time she made a list of 14 things she wanted to do, and then we just like went out and did them all. So kind of like spending quality time and intentional, and when you're with them, just like be really present with them, not like, hey, still on the phone on Slack or whatever,
Yeah.
At MaxCDN, and when I kind of came up with the managing happiness thing, this was always a constant complaint from my wife that I'm not really there. I'm still like thinking about the work. And so we came up with, when I come home, I put my phone on silent and put it on a charger and leave it away. And I got an extra home phone line so people from the office can call me in case something dramatic happens, which never happened, So, but, have this rule, like, phone away and just be present, like, because, often you don't have that much time in terms of, same thing with what you said before in terms of like making these impactful things for the business, versus like spending a lot of time with the business, so like rather spend like really quality time, do cool shit, be present, like, go bonkers and play like an idiot with your kid, versus just like sitting next to the kids on your phone or whatever, for like 10 hours.
Have you maintained that discipline since your MaxCDN days?
On and off, it's kind of like with every habit, kind of you fall off the wagon and then you kind of get back on. It's just like I track this in my habit tracker. If I spend quality Emma time, which is my daughter, and quality Yoda time, which is my wife, have like a checkbox for this every day. And so I can, like, when I do my habit tracking, I can look at this like, okay, did I really spend quality time with her today or not? And then if it's not the case, then I go there and do this. It's like another reminder to, and then you have the habit tracking. You see that the track or the streak, or the lack of a streak, and then like, okay, yeah, it's time to change something.
Yeah, that's great. One thing I'm really guilty of that I'm trying to be more conscientious of is like checking my phone for work-related things first thing in the morning, because I like to have quiet time in the morning, read a bit. And if I check my phone first, inevitably there's some emergency that's not really an emergency, but it's distracting, and I can't get back to that peaceful place, or it's much more difficult for me to. So I've been really exercising the discipline to push that to the side, have my quiet time first, and then open up my phone. And it makes a huge difference in the quality of my morning.
Yeah, all goes back to habits again. I have, like, on managing happiness, one of the things you figure out is a not to-do list, things you don't want to do. For example, first one on my list is, I have it open here, no phone before finishing my morning routine, which is like doing my morning yoga, like, planning my day and blah, blah, like a few things. Another one's like not to eat after 9 p.m. because if I eat after 9 p.m., for me, it's not about gaining weight, but if I eat after 9 p.m., I get like a energy boost, and then I will not go to bed like till 1 or 2 p.m. and I get up really early. I get up at 5:30, or 5. And so then my morning routine, or like the day's shit if I'm doing this. Other ones, not to travel more than 1 week per month without daughter and wife, because otherwise this creates disharmony. And almost like only be in the background, don't be in the org chart for having like a portfolio of businesses. It's a similar one is like, don't have a dancing bear business. Like Tony Robbins, for example, if he doesn't dance, the whole business doesn't run. So
yeah.
Other things, only Calendly, because like if you tell me like, hey David, let's have a call at blah time and it's 4 a.m. my time, like, sure, let's do it. I'm broken like this in the head. Or I have like everything, my calendar is blocked out for family time, for morning routine, etc. And if you would like talk to me on the phone, it's like, can you do it there? I said yes, and would violate the family time, for example. But if it only appointments via Calendly, this it kind of protects me from myself.
Sure.
And another one is like not to do this like non-compounding stuff. I'm always in a long game. I always want to do stuff that's compounding. And if there's like one-offs and stuff like this that's not adding to the compounding thing, is another one. And then don't drift, which comes from one of my favorite books, which is by Napoleon Hill, called Outwitting the Devil.
Okay.
That's you're nodding. I guess you know who Napoleon Hill is.
I do. I was expecting to say a different book, so I've not read that book.
Think and Grow Rich, or there's a bunch. But this book he wrote, but he didn't dare to publish because it's so critical towards society, the school system, church, etc. So he thought he gets killed if he published it, and it was published maybe 10 or 12 years ago, and he's like dead since like the 40s, something like this, or 50s. And yeah, it's a really amazing book. Like top 3 books that's on the top 3 list that had the biggest impact in my life. So I can highly recommend. He basically interviews the devil, asking the devil, what does the devil do to make us not reach our goals? And the key thing that the devil does is fear, implanting fear in us.
So what are your key takeaways from that before we move on? I'm curious to hear what you implement from that book.
The main thing is the fear part, like, I go on a tangent, but I think it's worth it. So I used to be very introverted, which was because it's about founders, right? And this was holding me back like crazy as a founder. I was uncomfortable on conference calls. Like public speaking was like horrible for me. I preferred to shoot myself in the face. And also selling, I hated sales with a passion.
Okay.
Right? Because I always felt like a used car salesman. And so I did Toastmasters, which is like public speaking courses thingy. I did 2 Toastmasters classes per week, and I did 2 networking events in LA per week until I was like exposure therapy style. I just like overcame my shyness, right? But it really clicked in my head when my yoga teacher said, every decision in life you make out of love or fear. These are like always the basic emotions why you do things, right? And kind of like going back to sales, if I want to sell you this product here because I believe that this product will have a positive impact in your business or your life, this product will really, if you buy this, you'll be really better off. Your pain points will be eased, right? then I'm selling out of love because I want to improve your life. Versus if I'm selling out of fear, I'm selling because I want to pay my mortgage, I want to hit my numbers or whatever, right? And you also feel where I'm coming from, if this, why I'm selling this to you. And so this is like so helpful for me to, actually enjoy selling. And like, I can even be pushy, like, hey, Jim, like freaking buy this. It's going to be so good for you. And you'll feel where I'm coming from. Or public speaking or being on this podcast, I would have never done it because I would have thought like, oh, do they think what I'm saying is stupid? Do they think I look weird? Do they think I have a weird German accent? Whatever, right? And then I would, would be all about me and I would freeze and I, fear-based, I can't give a presentation. But if I do it out of love because what I say here can potentially help them improve their life or their business, then I'm doing it out of love and it just flows. So it's, and I can give you like lots of other examples if you want to hear them, but this my personal mantra: make decisions of love, not fear. It's guiding me in everything that I'm doing.
Yeah, that's so good. I'm glad you brought this up because I saw that video clip from your website, which is all very well done, by the way. And I thought that was quite profound. So it was in my mind to bring up to you and ask you about that. And it's interesting. David and I, my co-founder and I, have been part of a lot of sales calls where we're, being sold something. And so often the salesperson will come on the line. They've not researched us. They don't seem to care at all about us as people or our business. And they just open up their pitch deck and go through it 100 miles an hour. And at the end of it, they're okay, any questions? Like, that was awful. It's like, it just feels icky. And it was paradigm shifting to me when I recognized that we will buy in spite of the salesperson fairly often, not because of them. In other words, where the product, sells itself, or maybe the principal at the company has done a really good job demonstrating their competence in the sales letter or something like that. But the sales pitch is just awful and not connective and not warm and just rough.
Absolutely. Like a lot of salespeople are, driven by fear, or just like, they follow the scripts without thinking. Well, like people want to buy, don't want to be sold to, right? So,
yeah. It's kind of funny because like David and I have no experience in sales, no formal training, and we're just like, we're going to do this. So, I mean, our average sales call is maybe 1 hour. This is when we're selling our product. So 1 hour, we'll talk for 50 to 55 minutes about them, their life, their family, their passion, their product, their motivation, all of that. And it's not disingenuous. Like I love learning about people. And then we'll talk for maybe 5 minutes about our product. And it's been amazing how many people have bought from us that don't even scope out our competitors because we build that relationship and trust. And it's
all about trust.
There's no question that there are companies out there that have been around longer and that offer a more superior product, et cetera, and have more experience in the space. But that trust element in that connection, and also just being listened to, like I feel like that it's so rare for people to just listen to one another that I think that's so refreshing for people.
And also people remember you better when they talk more versus when you talked. It's like also they like you better if it's the case,
Yeah. Yeah. I remember reading Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yes,
and
really good book.
It is. And he talks about that. It's like, someone saying after a dinner party, that person, David, was so fascinating. And you said like 5 words and just listened to them drone on for an hour, but they find you absolutely delightful.
Yeah. Because I think also the key is what makes you an interesting conversation partner. If you ask really good questions, if you ask smart questions, that challenge people to think, I think that's the,
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, what has your experience been in sharing your ethos as it relates to sales, like this idea of operating out of fear versus love with people in your businesses that sell? In other words, you obviously live and breathe this mentality. It is truly just the essence of who you are. You can just tell you're a very gentle type person. How do you scale that? Like, how do you impart that on the people that you lead, and specifically the salespeople that you lead?
I mean, it's part of our core values. All my businesses have love, not fear. It's part of our core values. And, I tell a bunch of stories or stories on like how somebody in our business really showed that, while taking care of a customer or internally or whatever. And so I always drive this home, and we do like with everybody who signs with us, everybody who comes on board has to, the last page of the contract are our core values, and they have to initial next to the core values, and sign that they are going to live up to these. Otherwise, it's a reason for termination. And then we do an onboarding call with everybody we hired this month. And the lead goes through our core values, our mission, vision, our core values, and tells a bunch of stories with each core values. Because the idea is that, at some point, if you really hammer the mission, vision, and core values into everybody's head, everybody will make decisions the same way how you or the leadership team would make decisions. And there's lots of less back and forth because they can answer 95% of all the what should I do, by just looking at the mission, vision, and core values.
Yeah. It goes back to that parrot idea for the CEO that you mentioned earlier.
I have another really cool story. A friend of mine did ring.com. He sold to Amazon for like a lot of money. And I was talking to his head of engineering, nerding out about mission, vision, values. And he said he was leading the engineering department. And one of the engineers came to him and said like, hey, we have these floodlights that you put on, the ring floodlights you put on the side of the house when somebody walks past.
We have ring products at home. Yeah.
So the floodlight thingy, the engineer came and said like, hey, since we have the lights here and we have a microphone in there, we could program a party mode. And if you turn on party mode, the lights will flash with the music, and the engineer thought like, that's the best idea since sliced bread, right? And my buddy could have said like, dude, that's a stupid idea, go back to work. And then the guy would have been crushed. He would be not performing for a while, and he would not bring up ideas. Maybe it's a good idea at some point, right? And he said, cool idea, but what does this have to do with our mission, which is to make neighborhoods safer? And the engineer said, oh yeah, you're right. And it's out. And so kind of like illustrating like, if people really understand what the mission and vision of your company are, then everybody can make a bunch of decisions, just the right decisions, by running it through this filter. This is why I'm also such a big fan of having in your life your personal mission, vision, or family core values. So every big decision you can run through this filter and see like, is this really who we are, who we aspire to be, or not?
That's so good. Well, David, I know it's late there. I feel like we could talk for hours and hours.
We can do this again.
Yeah, I would love that, actually. There's a million more things I would love to talk to you about. And you've been very gracious with your time, and I really appreciate it. On the landing page, we'll have, of course, the recording, but also links to your businesses, LinkedIn, etc. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, and I guess specifically as it relates to managing happiness, I know we talked about that a lot today, or any of your other businesses, what's the best way for them to reach out?
You can always connect with me on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever. Please add you heard me on Jim's show, because I get a lot of requests, but if there's like some context, I'll respond. You can also email me at david@henzel.com. I'm a very social person, so happy to chat, and if I can provide value somehow, just please reach out.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for your time. Really appreciate it. Hope you have a good night.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for having me.
All right. Cheers.